Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to imagine you're an architect, right?
Okay.
And you are halfway through building this incredibly complex, totally custom house.
Sure.
But suddenly your boss just walks in and fires you because he bought a highly automated self-swinging hammer.
A self-swinging hammer.
Right, exactly. And like the hammer is incredibly fast. It never gets tired. It never takes a lunch break. But there's a massive problem here.
It doesn't know what a house is.
Exactly. It has absolutely no idea what a house is actually supposed to look like.
Right.
So when the blueprints need to change or, the ground shifts unexpectedly, you're just left with this machine blindly smashing holes in the walls.
Yeah, just doing damage at scale.
Totally. And today, we are taking a deep dive into why that exact scenario is playing out in boardrooms everywhere. We're looking at why the biggest mistake organizations are making with artificial intelligence isn't, ignoring the technology. It's using it to replace humans instead of upgrading them.
Which is such a critical distinction.
It really is. We are pulling all our insights today from a fascinating research article by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover. It's titled Beyond Replacement: The AI Leadership Imperative of Human Augmentation. So if you are leading a team or honestly just trying to navigate your own career right now, our mission today is to figure out why the most important choice in business isn't whether to adopt AI, but how to actually integrate it with the people who already know how to build a house.
Yeah, and that distinction between the hammer replacing the architect versus the hammer assisting the architect, it completely changes the trajectory of a company.
Right.
When you look closely at historical waves of automation, I mean, whether we are talking about the introduction of enterprise software decades ago or the whole digital transformation wave of the 2010s, a really consistent pattern emerges.
What's the pattern?
Well, the technology itself merely enables possibilities. It doesn't dictate the future. Right. It's the organizational design and critically the leadership philosophy behind the adoption that actually determines what happens to the workforce and the bottom line. The technology is just, it's just raw material.
Just raw material. Okay. Reading through Dr. Westover's research, you realize organizations are essentially splitting into two fundamentally opposed camps right now when it comes to that philosophy.
Yes, very polarized.
Right. So first you have companies that are looking at their workforce, looking at AI, and basically deciding their primary goal is just to buy cheaper labor.
They want to cut costs.
Exactly. They treat the AI as a direct substitute for a human worker to, save a buck. They want to eliminate tasks, shrink headcount. In the research, economists refer to this mindset as the substitution effect, or cost arbitrage.
And the environment inside a company running on that replacement strategy becomes very, very rigid.
How so?
Because the whole goal is to remove the human from the equation as much as possible, right? So these organizations tend to implement completely opaque algorithms.
Like a black box.
Exactly like a black box. The machine spits out a decision, nobody really knows how it got there, and the workflows are locked down so tightly that human discretion is basically stripped away.
Wow.
Yeah, the worker is viewed as, well, essentially a liability on a spreadsheet that just needs to be zeroed out.
That sounds miserable. But then you look at the other camp, which is operating on what they call the augmentation strategy.
The complete inverse.
Totally. They treat AI as a complement to human capabilities. They're aiming for what economists call the productivity effect. So instead of trying to find ways to fire the worker, they're looking for ways to amplify the worker's judgment.
Right, which means keeping them in the loop.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it definitely automates the boring, routine subtasks. Like nobody wants to spend 3 hours manually formatting a spreadsheet.
No, nobody.
But it intentionally keeps the human in the loop for the final call. The AI has to be explainable so the human can understand its reasoning, crust it, and actually override it if the context demands it.
Which brings us back to aviation.
Yes. Augmentation is treating AI like a co-pilot that instantly processes all the instrument data, right?
Yeah.
Rather than treating it like an autopilot system where you just lock the human pilot out of the cockpit and, just cross your fingers and hope the machine knows how to land in a thunderstorm.
And what's fascinating here is that we are actually seeing the fallout of these two different mindsets in real time.
Oh, the McKinsey data.
Exactly. If you look at 2023 data from McKinsey, 55% of organizations have now adopted AI in at least one business function.
55%. That's more than half.
Yeah, and compare that to just 20% back in 2017.
That is breakneck speed.
It really is. The adoption is moving so fast. But the outcomes of that adoption are wildly polarized based on which philosophy the company chose. replacement or augmentation.
And the disparity in the numbers is huge. The text cites research by Fountain showing that firms investing heavily in human-AI collaboration, the ones leaning hard into that augmentation co-pilot model we just talked about, they're seeing a 30% higher rate of product and service innovation compared to the firms just trying to cut costs with replacement.
30% is massive.
It's enough to completely dominate a market over a 5-year period.
Absolutely. And, industry pressures often force these strategies one way or the other. Take the financial services sector, for example.
Right.
A bank operates under incredibly heavy regulatory scrutiny. If they deny a loan, they have to be able to legally explain exactly why that decision was made.
Oh, so they can't use the black box.
Exactly. Because of that external pressure for explainability, financial institutions lean heavily into augmentation. They use the AI to generate deep insights or flag, complex fraud patterns at scale, but they preserve the human decision authority.
That makes sense.
But conversely, if you look at sectors like logistics or certain types of heavy manufacturing, you see a much higher rate of attempted full automation. The goal there is often pure replacement from day one.
Okay, I hear that, but I'm looking at these numbers, and honestly, the math isn't really mathing for me.
What do you mean?
Well, let's say a logistics company adopts a pure replacement strategy. On paper, they can instantly cut millions in salaries, health benefits, HR costs, just by automating an entire department.
Sure, on paper.
Right. So shouldn't that pure cost-cutting be strictly more profitable in the long run? Why doesn't that spreadsheet logic actually hold up in reality?
Because that spreadsheet logic fails to account for the fact that organizations are complex, living systems made of human beings.
Oh, right. Humans.
Right. When leadership adopts a replacement strategy, they trigger this massive, entirely predictable backfire effect.
Okay, walk me through the backfire.
The primary mechanism destroying that on-paper profitability is what psychologists call a psychological contract breach.
A psychological contract breach.
Yeah. When employees look at a new, multi-million-dollar AI system and realize it is a literal existential threat to their livelihood, their behavior instantly changes.
Of course it does. Survival mode.
Exactly. The unwritten contract of trust between employer and employee is broken. The workers go into survival mode, and they withhold the one thing the company desperately needs to make the AI work.
Which is what?
Their discretionary effort.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that means they stop sharing their deep, unwritten knowledge. I mean, if I genuinely believe this machine sitting on my desk is currently being trained to fire me, I am certainly not going to help train.
If they don't, the text actually highlights a European bank that learned this the hard way.
Oh, the loan processing one.
Yes. They decided to implement an AI-driven loan processing system, and the stated goal was pure efficiency and cost reduction. But to get the system up and running, they needed their experienced human underwriters to validate the machine's decisions and, train it on complex risk factors.
Right, they needed the humans to teach the machine.
But the underwriters naturally feared for their jobs, so they gave the absolute bare minimum input during the training phase. They essentially went on a silent strike.
A silent strike. That's fascinating.
And because the system was trained on inadequate human insight, during its first 6 months of operation, the bank experienced a staggering 40% increase in error rates.
Wait, 40%?
40% increase, yes.
So the underwriters essentially realized they were being asked to dig their own graves, so they just handed the AI a broken shovel.
That's a perfect way to put it.
I mean, that is a brilliant survival tactic for the worker, but an absolute nightmare for the company's bottom line. You are paying millions for a system that is making 40% more mistakes because the human expertise just walked out the door, mentally, if not physically.
Exactly. And it leads directly into a related disaster known as capability erosion.
Capability erosion.
Yeah, this happens when an organization gets overconfident in its new tech. They fire the human experts, completely unaware that the AI system is actually incredibly brittle.
Brittle in what way?
It might handle 90% of routine tasks perfectly, right?
Yeah.
But it cannot handle edge cases or contextual nuance or sudden shifts in the broader environment.
Right, which reminds me of the retailer case study in the research. It perfectly illustrates that brittleness.
Oh, the supply chain one.
Yeah. So a major retailer implements this highly sophisticated inventory management AI, and they decide, well, we no longer need our seasoned human merchant.
They fire the architects.
Exactly. Everything is running smoothly for a bit until a massive, unexpected supply chain disruption hits the global market.
And what happens?
Suddenly, the AI system has no idea how to process this unprecedented event. It completely lacks the contextual market knowledge to adapt. And more importantly, it doesn't have the deep personal supplier relationships that the fired human merchants used to hold in their heads.
Right. An AI can't take a supplier out to lunch.
Exactly. When a crisis hits, an AI can't call a supplier it's known for 10 years and ask for a favor to reroute a shipment. The system just blindly ordered based on outdated patterns, and it generated massive overstock costs.
Because the organization effectively optimized itself for a static, routine environment that just didn't exist anymore.
Right, they completely lost their ability to adapt.
So the challenge becomes, how do you avoid that trap? How do you actually build an environment where the human worker wants to help the machine succeed?
Right.
And the research outlines a blueprint for getting this right, starting with how a company communicates.
And Siemens provides a really perfect roadmap for that communication.
They really do.
They were rolling out a predictive maintenance AI across their manufacturing facilities. And, just for context, predictive maintenance means the AI uses sensors to tell you a machine is going to break down before it actually breaks.
Very useful.
Super useful. But instead of the executives just buying the software and forcing the engineers to use it, leadership launched a massive multi-month engagement process.
They brought them into the room.
Yes. They brought the actual floor engineers into the room and asked them to define exactly which decisions required human judgment and which ones needed algorithmic support.
So they mitigated the fear by giving the workers agency over the tool. It was framed as a way to empower the technicians, giving them the ability to proactively prevent problems rather than constantly running around the factory floor reacting to emergencies.
Yeah, the data on this is striking.
It is.
The Siemens facilities that had high levels of this employee engagement achieved a 35% greater reduction in downtime compared to their own facilities that had lower engagement.
Wow.
The psychological buy-in literally drove the performance of the software.
But, buy-in and trust only get you so far.
Fair point.
You can communicate transparently all day long, but if the worker doesn't actually possess the skills to use the tool, you are still stuck. You can't just hand an accountant a login to a complex AI platform and expect them to magically transform their workflow.
Right. Unilever recognized that exact capability gap.
Yes, the AI Academy.
They tackled it by launching an internal AI academy. They realized that to make augmentation work, the workforce needed comprehensive capability building. So they ended up training over 15,000 employees.
15,000? That's a massive investment.
Huge.
Yeah.
And this wasn't just basic surface-level AI literacy like, how to write a simple prompt. They trained people on how to actually integrate AI into their specific daily domains, whether that was supply chain logistics, marketing, or HR.
And the return on investment for that training was just wild.
Oh, yeah. Within 2 years of launching the academy, Unilever saw a 300% jump in employee-generated AI use cases.
300%.
Yeah. Because when you actually demystify the technology for the people doing the daily grind, they start using it to solve highly specific friction points that the C-suite executives didn't even know existed.
Exactly. But even with great training, the actual interface of the tool really matters.
Yes, the UI.
Right. You can train someone perfectly, but if the tool isn't designed for a human brain to interact with it, it's going to fail. And the Cleveland Clinic's work in radiology sets the absolute gold standard for that human-centered design.
Oh, I love this example.
When they were integrating AI into their imaging departments, they deliberately chose not to implement an autonomous diagnostic system.
But autopilot.
No autopilot. Instead, they designed a collaborative interface. So the AI scans the image, highlights potential abnormalities, and critically, this is the best part, it provides a statistical confidence level for its findings.
It actually shows its work.
It shows its work. But the human doctor retains complete interpretive authority.
And what's amazing is that the AI is actually programmed to learn from the cases where the human doctor disagrees with it.
Right.
The human corrects the machine, and the machine gets sharper. And by using this collaborative design, the Cleveland Clinic saw a 23% improvement in diagnostic speed.
Without losing any quality.
Exactly, without sacrificing a single drop of diagnostic quality.
The radiologists embraced it because the AI was doing the exhausting, routine screening work. It freed up their cognitive bandwidth, allowing them to focus their deep medical expertise on the highly complex, ambiguous cases.
And that shift in the doctor's day-to-day focus hints at a much bigger organizational requirement, which is role redesign.
You have to fundamentally reconceptualize what a person's job actually is. JP Morgan Chase executed this beautifully with their Core9 platform.
Contract intelligence?
Exactly. They deployed AI to review massive commercial loan agreements. Historically, this was incredibly tedious work.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, lawyers and paralegals just staring at hundreds of pages of boilerplate text looking for irregular clauses.
Yeah.
It consumed about 360,000 person-hours a year.
Okay, so if JP Morgan was operating on a replacement strategy, they would have looked at those 360,000 saved hours.
And they would have salivated.
Right. They would have fired a massive chunk of their legal staff and just patted themselves on the back for cutting costs.
But they didn't. Instead, they pivoted those highly trained legal professionals.
Right.
Because the AI was now handling the routine document review and instantly flagging the anomalies, the attorneys were suddenly freed up.
What did they do with them?
They had them focus on complex client advisory work, deep negotiation strategy, and, nuanced risk assessment.
Wow.
They dropped their processing time by 80%. And in doing so, the legal department actually transformed from a pure overhead cost center into a revenue-enabling function.
That is incredible. They took the hours saved by the machine and turned them into higher-tier service for their clients.
That is the ultimate sweet spot. Researchers Wilson and Dougherty actually call this the perfect human-AI collaboration zone. Humans amplify the AI by training it and explaining its outputs, while the AI amplifies the humans by giving them incredible speed and scale.
It sounds perfect, but let's look at the harsh reality of corporate cycles here.
Okay.
This all sounds incredibly inspiring when profits are high. But what happens when the economy dips? The CFO demands a 10% budget cut across the board, and executives start looking for quick, painful savings. Like, how do companies keep that toxic replacement mindset from creeping back into the boardroom when times get tough?
Honestly, it is the single biggest risk to this entire model.
Right.
The research is very clear that relying on good intentions is just not enough. Organizations have to structurally lock in the augmentation mindset through hard governance.
Structural lock-in, what does that look like?
You have to rewire the company's DNA so that when budget pressure hits, the system defaults to protecting the human-AI collaboration rather than destroying it. Salesforce is a really prime example of this.
What did Salesforce do?
They created an office of ethical and humane use of technology. And this isn't just some toothless advisory board. They mandate rigorous human impact assessments before any new AI is deployed.
Hey, really?
Yeah. The product and engineering teams literally have to prove how their new features will augment user capabilities rather than just quietly replacing them. It builds a real bureaucratic barrier against that default efficiency-only mindset.
That's brilliant. You also have to spread the power out, though.
Yeah.
The research advocates heavily for democratizing the technology through what they call citizen development programs.
Yes.
Typically, when a new tech rolls out, it comes down as a mandate from some ivory tower IT department, right?
And everyone's terrified of it.
Exactly. Normal employees are terrified. But if you give non-technical employees the tools to build and configure their own AI solutions for their own specific workflows, that fear just evaporates. They take ownership of the machine.
But to make those citizen development programs actually work, you need continuous learning systems that bridge the gap between the tech experts and the daily workers.
How so?
Well, Microsoft does this through 6-month AI rotation programs. They take their deep AI specialists and embed them directly into different non-technical business units.
Well, that's smart.
It does two things. First, it spreads technical expertise out onto the actual floor where the work gets done. But second, it forces the AI developers to see how messy the real world is.
Right. The real world doesn't look like a lab.
Exactly. They gather vital insights on how people actually collaborate with the tools, which prevents them from building systems that look great on a whiteboard but fail in a busy office.
But all of these structural changes, the governance, the embedded developers, the training academies, they require a massive shift in how we view the basic relationship between an employer and an employee.
The psychological contract again?
Exactly. The research frames this as the evolution of the psychological contract. For decades, the implicit deal was pretty simple, right? You give the company your loyalty and they give you static job security. You do your defined tasks, you get your paycheck, and nothing really changes.
Right.
But AI destroys that contract completely because the specific tasks are going to change every 6 months.
Yeah, so the new promise a leading organization makes cannot be static job security. It has to be employment security through employability.
Employability.
The company is essentially looking at the worker and saying, We cannot promise that your specific daily tasks will even exist in 3 years, but we commit to continuously upskilling you so that your overall value in the labor market only grows.
Wow.
But organizations have to be willing to shift their internal performance metrics to match this new promise.
That's the hard part.
It is. You cannot evaluate a worker based on how fast they complete a routine task anymore because the machine is doing the routine tasks. You have to start rewarding learning agility, adaptability, and complex problem solving. If your annual performance reviews are still using the old metrics, the culture will simply reject the augmentation strategy.
Bringing this right back to you, listening to this, whether you are deciding which company to work for next or you are leading a team of your own right now, this dynamic is exactly what you need to be evaluating. You want to look for an organization that operates like a GPS, not a static map.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah. The old corporate model is a static map. It shows you one fixed route, one specific job description, and if a bridge is out or the road closes, you are just completely lost. But an augmentation culture is a GPS. It acknowledges that the terrain is shifting in real time, and it actively helps you reroute, adapt, and learn a new path as you go.
And the transition from the map to the GPS requires immense trust, continuous financial investment in learning, and a fundamental philosophical belief that the human being navigating the route is the single most valuable component of the entire system.
So what does this all mean? The defining takeaway from all these sources, from the McKinsey data to the brilliant UI design at the Cleveland Clinic to the role shifts at JP Morgan, is that the leadership challenge of the AI era is not a technological problem.
No, it's not.
It is a philosophical one. Engaged employees who have been given enhanced capabilities and trust will always completely outperform anxious, terrified workers who are just trying to survive in a company that treats them like a cost to be extracted. Your uniquely human skills, your empathy, your ability to navigate deep ambiguity, your contextual judgment when things go wrong, those traits are becoming infinitely more valuable right now.
Because technology is simply the enabler. It expands the menu of what is possible, but it is the human choices, how we design the daily roles, how transparently we communicate, how we govern the rollout, that will determine whether AI creates a new era of broadly shared prosperity or just a deeply fractured, paranoid workforce.
Yeah.
The machine doesn't get to decide that. We do.
We do. As we wrap up this deep dive, there's one final unwritten consequence to all of this that I want to leave you with.
Okay.
Let's say an organization gets this perfectly right. They successfully implement total utopian augmentation. The AI takes over absolutely all the routine, pattern-based, boring tasks.
Right, the dream.
Right. But that leaves the human workers to deal exclusively with the highly ambiguous, high-stakes, deeply complex problem-solving.
Oh, I see where you're going.
If you were forced to operate at that absolute peak level of heavy cognitive work all day, every day, without those mindless little tasks that used to give your brain a 20-minute break, how will that affect human fatigue? What does severe burnout actually look like in a fully augmented workforce where the easy tasks just don't exist anymore? Think about that the next time you hop in the cockpit with your new AI co-pilot.